Hey, Butch, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. It's very nice to talk to you today.
You too.
Well, I thought we'd start with now SummerSlam's over. Clash at the Castle is the next big event on the horizon. So, how excited are you for WWE coming to the UK for a stadium show?
Yeah, listen. Every time WWE come to the UK, it's amazing for the fans. Even all the Americans will say how great the European audiences are.
Mhm.
But obviously, for me, it has extra special meaning being able to come back home. It's been such a long time. It's been a long time coming, especially through the pandemic and whatnot. We haven't really done a lot over there, so it's extra special for me to come back home, and it's even more special that it's in Cardiff with my history through independent wrestling and whatnot.
How do you anticipate the atmosphere being different than it is for other premium live events for both the fans and the wrestlers, not just the ones from the UK?
Yeah, I think, like I say, so even all the Americans, they always say to me how amazing the audiences in the UK are. It's something that they always look forward to. So I think everyone knows what those UK crowds bring. Even the smaller shows, like
Mhm.
places like Blackpool, it's one of the best experiences, atmosphere-wise, I've ever had. But then to put 80,000 odd people in a building, you can just imagine it's going to be 10 times that. So yeah, it's very exciting.
What do you think it is about the UK crowd that makes them so special? Do you think it's like how we don't get as many live events in as they do in America, and we've not got a stadium one for so long. So are we like a bit more starved, or we go the extra mile to be invested in WWE?
I think that's definitely part of it, but also I just think it's a cultural thing too. You
Mhm.
know, the atmosphere at a football game in the UK, you know, is amazing. That's something, like I say, people from around the world want to come to experience, and wrestling's no different. I think there's a cultural element, but like also the fact that we don't get WrestleManias, we don't get these big live events, and that's why this one's going to feel extra important.
Mhm. Do you have any memories of seeing WWE live growing up and what that was like for you?
I only ever went once or twice. I went to a lot of smaller independent shows and stuff like that. I think I might have only seen one
Mhm.
WWE show, and that would have been a TV taping in Birmingham.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't have a huge experience as a kid or whatever watching. But I
Mhm.
went to a lot of live pro wrestling, and I was 12 years old doing wrestling, so I was a part of a lot of shows at that age too. So yeah, I don't have the stereotypical memories of all of that. But I remember even as a kid thinking, I wish we could get a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam or one of these big live events, and now we have our own. So how cool is that?
Mhm. Well, what's been your favorite moment wrestling in the UK since you signed with WWE?
So within WWE, I guess I would have to say it's the Blackpool, the original show, the UK Championship tournament, wrestling against Tyler, somebody that I had a hand in training. I've been around him since the start of his career. We're synonymous with each other, and then being able to main event in that show, um, obviously, is always going to be really special. And for the way that Blackpool audience took to us as well, we didn't have that TV exposure, but they knew who we were. They had chants for us ready and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that'll always feel really special.
You said there you began wrestling at 12, and how have you seen in that time to now the UK wrestling scene change and develop?
Yeah, it's a completely different place. Obviously, it's been affected by the pandemic and everything else that comes along with that. But previous to that, the position it was in compared to when I started, it was a whole different world. When I started, there was no route to get anywhere. You couldn't make a living in the UK, and it definitely wasn't an easy task to get from there to a company like WWE, or even to be able to make a big name on the independents. Whereas the way it was left and the way it could continue to be was complete 180. You know,
Mhm.
you have multiple people making a full time and a good living off of it. And also now there's a route to WWE. There's a very, it's still going to be tough to do it, but there's that simple route that you can envision and you can see, which is something we never had when I first started in the UK. There was probably one or two companies that had any name value, and then outside of that, it was put it this way: my first show would have been in front of three people,
Yeah.
and that was pretty common. Between 3 and 20 something people was the absolute norm. Whereas now an independent show, you know, that they sell out all the time, and all the way up to this Clash at the Castle show, like I say, 80,000 people. It's incredible.
Mhm. So in March, we saw you make your debut on SmackDown and as Butch, so changing your name, and a lot of people had a lot to say about it online. So did you anticipate that kind of reaction when you made the change?
Yeah, of course. And I think, to be honest, that's the biggest source of sort of concern when you're going into a change like that, is knowing the reaction that's going to come from it.
Mhm.
And I just hope that people would give it the opportunity and the chance, and just see what it could become. And I'm still in that process too myself, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I've definitely saw a lot of people. There's a lot of people now that tell me they much prefer that over stuff that I've done in the past. And I feel like I've been able to show a different range, a different type of performance that people aren't used to with me. I was
Mhm.
always known for the in-ring work, and obviously there's been a lot more character-driven stuff. And but there's still wide open. I still have that ability. I still have that quality in-ring work that I can't wait to show. And hopefully in the coming weeks and months, and hopefully at Clash at the Castle, I get to really show that I'm still that guy, and mixed with the personality that I've shown through this Butch character. I hope that people like it.
Well, speaking of you like showing more personality, I kind of feel like maybe that started more in early 2020 when you teamed with Riddle at NXT. You were the Broserweight. So, how much did you enjoy that? And did you think that brought you out more? And were you disappointed that it was cut short?
Yeah, that's one of the most fun parts of my career I've had, and it's such a shame that it was cut so short, and we never really got a resolution off of it. And I also feel like that could have been a big springboard for me to go on to bigger things in NXT and then eventually the main roster. Obviously, when me and Riddle were done as a team, the inevitable matches that came with each other after that, I feel like could have been huge. I could have been a real springboard for both of us. But
Yeah.
you look at Riddle now, and he's doing great for himself, and he's got himself to that point anyway. Doing a similar thing with Randy, actually.
Yeah.
And he's shown what he can do on that level, and hopefully it's the same's there for me to do, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Do you think if that had continued longer, the transition from you to Butch would have maybe been easier for the fans because they would have seen that directly, like you and Riddle doing these vignettes together, and then you now as Butch?
Well, honestly, it's hard to know whether the transition to Butch would have ever happened at all. Right? Obviously, I ended up going home for the best part of, I think it was 6 or 7 months, and then coming back to NXT and having to restart all over again in a completely different environment too. Obviously, post pandemic, it was completely different than where we left off. So had I stayed in the States and continued that story, and then where that would have inevitably led, you've got to imagine it would have been matches between me and Matt Riddle, and
Mhm.
that could have springboarded me on to who knows what else. So the whole timeline would have been different. So it's hard to say, but it's definitely something I look back on and go, that could have been something great for the audience and for us as performers too. But you can't dwell on stuff like that. You just got to keep pushing forward, and when an opportunity comes, you got to take it and do your best with it.
Absolutely. Well, now you're working with Seamus and Ridge Holland, and Ridge is from England and Seamus is Irish. So, what's your kind of dynamic like together? And were they two people that you always were kind of drawn to just from being from that part of the world?
Yeah, so with Ridge, he was actually at my tryout, and that was when we first met. And then it took him a while to get over here because of visa issues and that kind of stuff. But we've obviously been in touch that whole time. We actually lived in the same neighborhood when I first moved to Orlando, so we've seen a lot of each other, and our families are close and stuff. So it's been a very natural transition for me to be able to be a part of that group being called up, and I think it's really good for him as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, with Ridge, I think obviously the Big E situation and that kind of stuff and injuries, it's been very stop start for him. But when he really gets going and people can really see what he's capable of, I think that's going to be great for him. It's going to be great for people to understand how good he actually is. So I don't think people get to see that, and then maybe there's people that have him pigeonholed a certain way or have a certain stamp on him that isn't really fair. And hopefully, when he gets going and you can see the quality of matches he can put on, that might change a lot of people's perspective on him. And then
Yeah.
as for Sheamus, obviously he's a veteran, he's been around for years and years and years. But the best thing about him is how hungry he still is. He's still like he should, or I guess, is at a different part of his career, technically, but you wouldn't know it. He's as excited and motivated and hungry as we are at the beginning of our sort of Raw and SmackDown run. So that makes it a lot easier too, having someone there that has the experience that we can lean on, but also how excited he is for what we're going to do moving forward is always a big help.
Mhm. Well, there has been a big change in WWE recently with Triple H taking over, and it's only been just over a week, but how have you seen things change already?
To be honest, up till now, it all feels strangely normal. Even
Yeah.
the day when obviously we were at SmackDown and we got notified that Vince had retired, obviously there's that second of people looking around like, did you see that? Can you believe this has happened? But then after that, everyone's so focused on the job that's at hand, it kind of feels strangely normal, but exciting at the same time. Obviously, I've worked with Triple H for years now, and I'm very loyal to him and I credit him for getting me to where I am. To be honest, taking people like myself, Tyler, Trent, everyone in the UK from the position that we're at. I think people forget that when that UK tournament happened, we hadn't really had much exposure. I think that's why it was so special. We didn't have a huge amount of exposure on an international scale. Progress was bubbling in ICW in these places, but that UK tournament was really just taking a bunch of talent and just trusting in us. Go out there and have 3-4 matches in one weekend on the network, make of it what you can, and he just put full trust in us. That springboarded us to where we are now, where I can provide for my family. I'm living out in Florida. It's a completely different lifestyle than I ever would have had without the likes of him, Regal, people like that just trusted in talent that they almost had no right to. You know what I mean? So to be able to work with him again is going to be incredible. I'm excited for what the future holds.
It always seemed like when Triple H was in charge of NXT that he did seem really invested personally in the talent and was really good at personally helping them grow. And he seemed to be really interested in the UK talent and the women's talent as well. Do you have like high hopes that he's going to be able to transfer those same qualities onto dealing with a much bigger roster now?
Yeah, of course. I think one thing everyone can say about him is he's extremely approachable, and he's excited to put out the best content we possibly can, and that's what NXT was always about. Going into it, we'd be saying, if we were paired with a WrestleMania, SummerSlam, or Royal Rumble, we want to make sure that this is the best show of the weekend.
Yeah.
And he had that same vision, the same as us who are out there competing. So I'm sure it's going to transition over just fine. And from what we've seen already, just off the back of the shows last night and on Saturday, I think there's already an excitement around it. Just watching those shows, and they feel slightly different.
Yeah.
And as a fan, I'm excited to see what the future holds, and obviously as a performer, the same.
Mm-hmm. Having worked as a wrestler for so long before you came to WWE, what did you learn from Triple H and Shawn Michaels as well that you maybe didn't expect to learn? Did you kind of come into it thinking that you knew maybe more than you did? Do you know what I mean?
So there's obviously a lot of like smaller details within wrestling that you could pick up from them that aren't necessarily worth going over. But the main thing that I've taken away from them, and I'll throw Regal in there too, obviously, but they just instill confidence in you. Like I say, I had no right to immediately be thrown in at the deep end the way that we were. Obviously, I was so young at the time, and Tyler even more so. I think he was 19, was he? Super young. I've been wrestling for 10 years, but nothing on that scale, nowhere near that. But they just trust you. They see that you can put out high quality work, and they just put that trust in you, and it instills confidence. And it's been like that the whole time. The fact that they're open to listen to your ideas and take them on board, and they're so open to understanding your opinion on something or the way that you think something should be done, and that does instill a huge amount of confidence in you to be like, no, I deserve to be here, and I'm in the right place. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest takeaway from there. Really, they have no right to do that. You're looking at people like Shawn Michaels. People say the best of all time, right? And is there willing to listen to ideas from people effectively in developmental, even though it kind of wasn't that towards the end. But still, the principle stands that they're so open to that. And I think instilling that confidence in us all is why those NXT shows were so good. because everybody felt completely comfortable and everyone was excited to go out there, as opposed to being scared or being nervous or any of that. There was never that nervous energy. It was always just excitement.
You also spent some time working as a producer for NXT UK. So what was it like being on that side of the camera for you?
Yeah, I love that side of it, and it's something that from the first real time I ever sat down with Triple H and got to talk about my goals and stuff going forward, that was the first thing I said, is I would love to work backstage. I would love to be a producer when it comes to the end of my time in wrestling, or alongside if that's possible, and it was in NXT UK. And so it's a great experience just to see how it works on that end and get an understanding of that. Just seeing how production meetings work and then hearing them, calling the camera cuts and that kind of stuff gives you a real appreciation for how much actually goes into a show that as a performer, sometimes you don't get that. And then for me personally, like, I love piecing matches together and being a help where I can on that side of things. And I think that's a huge strength of mine. So it's nice to be able to do that. And it also feels more rewarding sometimes, whereas I'm incredibly critical about my own work, but being able to be there and be in the process of getting a match out there and then it being a success and seeing what that means to those people in the match, that's always much more rewarding for me than me going out and having, a very high quality match, but we're coming out of there feeling like, we should have done this, I could have done that, this could be better. So yeah, it's a different experience.
Well, finally, having worked so closely with that roster, who are your standouts that you would like to see get a shot at Clash in the Castle to maybe show off what they can do on a bigger stage?
Obviously, I have to say the Welsh people on the roster. You have Eddie Dennis, Wild Boar, of course, Mark Andrews. My ideal scenario would be if I got to be in there with Mark Andrews. That would be a real full circle moment. But Flash Morgan Webster too. All of those guys that have come up in Wales. Obviously, I'm heavily connected to that scene with Attack Pro Wrestling, which was my company with Mark and others. And, we were running Catay's Community Centre, struggling to draw 100 people. But that was sort of what we call what kicked off a lot of the UK scene. Was a lot of people would come there, get to express themselves, work out who they are, and build from there. So being able to, for myself too, but being able to see any of those guys beyond that Cardiff show would be absolutely incredible.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Pete. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.